If Qui-Gon Jinn had been the one to train Anakin Skywalker, the Star Wars galaxy might have unfolded in profoundly different ways. Qui-Gon, known for his wisdom and defiance of the Jedi Council's more rigid practices, would have brought a unique perspective to Anakin's development, potentially altering his journey from a promising young Padawan to the tragic figure of Darth Vader. Qui-Gon's approach to the Force was deeply rooted in trust and balance. Unlike many of his contemporaries on the Jedi Council, he embraced the living Force, which focused on the present moment and the connection between all living things. This philosophy contrasted with the Council's often dogmatic adherence to the unifying Force, which prioritized long-term planning and destiny. Qui-Gon's attunement to the living Force would have influenced how he guided Anakin, encouraging him to embrace his emotions without letting them consume him. Anakin, as a character, was marked by his immense potential and his equally immense vulnerabilities. He craved validation and struggled with feelings of abandonment, fear, and anger. These emotions often clashed with the Jedi Order's teachings to suppress attachments and emotions deemed dangerous. Under Qui-Gon's mentorship, Anakin might have found a mentor who understood and addressed his emotional depth instead of dismissing it. Qui-Gon would likely have helped Anakin navigate these feelings rather than repress them, which could have prevented them from festering into the destructive rage that later consumed him. The bond between Qui-Gon and Anakin, established on Tatooine, was already significant. Qui-Gon saw Anakin's potential as the chosen one, someone prophesied to bring balance to the Force. Unlike Obi-Wan, who reluctantly took on Anakin as a Padawan after Qui-Gon's death, Qui-Gon chose Anakin deliberately, believing in his importance and value. This belief alone would have been a powerful foundation for their relationship. Anakin, feeling truly chosen and supported, might have had a stronger sense of security and belonging. Qui-Gon's defiance of the Jedi Council would also have played a critical role. He was not afraid to challenge the Order's decisions, and his mentorship of Anakin would likely have included teaching him to think critically about the Jedi's rules and actions. This could have been a double-edged sword. On the one hand, it might have encouraged Anakin to develop a stronger moral compass, independent of the Order's sometimes flawed principles. On the other hand, it might have further fueled Anakin's existing tendency to question authority, especially if Qui-Gon's teachings clashed with those of the Council or other Jedi. However, Qui-Gon's patient and compassionate nature would likely have mitigated this. Unlike the stricter Jedi Masters, he would not have enforced obedience through rigid discipline, but instead guided Anakin through reasoning and trust. This would have fostered a sense of mutual respect rather than fear or resentment, which Anakin often felt under the Jedi Order's traditional methods. Qui-Gon's mentorship might have instilled in Anakin the tools to manage his darker impulses without succumbing to them. Anakin's relationship with the Jedi Council would also have been influenced by Qui-Gon's presence. Qui-Gon's history of defying the Council and advocating for his own views might have paved the way for a more understanding relationship between Anakin and the Council. If Qui-Gon had been alive and actively mentoring Anakin, he might have acted as a mediator, bridging the gap between Anakin's impulsive tendencies and the Council's expectations. This could have reduced the isolation and distrust Anakin often felt, which Palpatine later exploited to seduce him to the dark side. Palpatine's influence, however, would remain a significant factor. Qui-Gon's teachings might have made Anakin less susceptible to the Chancellor's manipulations, as he would have been better equipped to recognize and resist the allure of power and fear. Qui-Gon's emphasis on the present and his guidance in managing emotions would have counteracted the seductive promises of the dark side. Anakin's fears of loss and his desire for control, which Palpatine so masterfully exploited, might have been addressed more effectively under Qui-Gon's mentorship. It is also worth considering how Qui-Gon's survival would have affected events leading up to and during the Clone Wars. Qui-Gon's perspective on the war might have been significantly different from that of the Jedi Council. He likely would have questioned the Jedi's role as generals in a galaxy-wide conflict, seeing it as a departure from their true purpose as peacekeepers and spiritual guides. If Qui-Gon had continued to mentor Anakin during this time, he might have shielded him from the psychological toll of war and the pressure to conform to the Jedi's increasingly militarized role. Anakin's secret marriage to Padme Amidala presents another critical point of divergence. Qui-Gon, who valued the living Force and individual agency, might have approached Anakin's attachment to Padme with more understanding than the Council. Instead of condemning their love outright, Qui-Gon might have helped Anakin reconcile his feelings with his duties as a Jedi. This guidance could have alleviated much of the secrecy and fear that plagued Anakin and ultimately led to his catastrophic fall. Under Qui-Gon's tutelage, Anakin might have been more confident and secure in himself, reducing his reliance on external validation and his susceptibility to manipulation. Qui-Gon's approach would likely have fostered a healthier balance between Anakin's extraordinary abilities and his humanity. This, in turn, could have allowed Anakin to fulfill his potential as the Chosen One, bringing balance to the Force without descending into darkness. The galaxy itself might have looked very different had Qui-Gon trained Anakin. The Jedi Order, the Republic, and even the Sith's resurgence under Palpatine could have been profoundly affected by Anakin's alternate path. Qui-Gon's presence would not only have changed the course of Anakin's life, but might also have challenged the rigidity of the Jedi Order, forcing it to evolve in ways that could have strengthened it against the coming storm. Anakin's journey, defined so heavily by the loss of those he loved and the inability to manage his emotions, might have been marked by greater stability and growth. Qui-Gon's death was the catalyst for much of the tragedy that followed, leaving Anakin without the guiding hand he desperately needed. If Qui-Gon had lived and continued to mentor him, the galaxy might have been spared the rise of Darth Vader and the devastation wrought by the Empire. Anakin Skywalker, trained by Qui-Gon Jinn, might have been a very different person, one capable of fulfilling his destiny as the Chosen One while preserving the values and virtues of the Jedi. The Force would still flow through him, but his path might have been one of light and balance rather than darkness and destruction. What could have been remains one of the most compelling questions in Star Wars history, showing how the choices and influence of a single mentor can shape the fate of individuals and entire galaxies. The potential dynamic between Qui-Gon Jinn and Anakin Skywalker offers an even deeper exploration into how mentorship and understanding could have reshaped the galaxy's fate. A prolonged and meaningful bond between the two might not only have influenced Anakin's inner struggles, but also the wider conflicts surrounding the Jedi Order, the Republic, and the emergence of the Sith. To fully appreciate the scope of this alternate path, we must consider how specific moments in Anakin's life might have played out differently under Qui-Gon's guidance. One significant moment would have been Anakin's struggle with his prophetic visions of Padme's death. In the timeline we know, these visions became a turning point, driving Anakin into desperation and making him vulnerable to Palpatine's manipulations. Qui-Gon, with his deep attunement to the living force, might have approached these visions with wisdom and patience, helping Anakin to interpret them without succumbing to fear. Qui-Gon's teachings could have emphasized the importance of accepting the natural flow of life and death, a lesson that might have provided Anakin with the emotional resilience to face his fears without being consumed by them. Qui-Gon's influence might also have led to a shift in how Anakin viewed power. Palpatine was able to exploit Anakin's desire for control, promising him the ability to save those he loved if he embraced the dark side. Qui-Gon, however, would likely have instilled in Anakin a more balanced understanding of power, not as a means of dominating or preventing loss, but as a tool for harmony and growth. By teaching Anakin that strength lies in trust, compassion, and acceptance rather than raw might, Qui-Gon could have diminished the allure of the dark side's promises. Another critical moment might have been the siege of Coruscant. During this pivotal event, Anakin's choices were heavily influenced by his deep mistrust of the Jedi Council and his growing reliance on Palpatine. Qui-Gon, as Anakin's master, would likely have acted as a buffer between Anakin and the Council, helping to mediate the tensions that drove Anakin further away from the Jedi. Qui-Gon's own history of challenging the Council's decisions might have lent credibility to his perspective in Anakin's eyes, fostering a relationship built on mutual trust and understanding. Qui-Gon's presence would also have had a significant impact on the larger political landscape of the Republic. As someone deeply skeptical of the Jedi Order's involvement in politics and war, Qui-Gon might have steered Anakin away from becoming entangled in the moral complexities of the Clone Wars. This could have included questioning the legitimacy of the Republic's actions and the motivations of figures like Palpatine. By encouraging Anakin to think critically about his role as a Jedi and a servant of the Republic, Qui-Gon might have prevented him from being drawn into the cycle of violence and manipulation that defined his later years. In addition to shaping Anakin's personal journey, Qui-Gon's continued presence would likely have had a ripple effect on the Jedi Order itself. Qui-Gon's unique approach to the Force and his willingness to challenge tradition might have inspired a re-evaluation of the Order's practices and beliefs. This could have included a greater emphasis on the living Force, a more flexible stance on attachments, and a stronger commitment to the Jedi's spiritual role rather than their militaristic one. Such changes might have strengthened the Jedi Order's resilience against the machinations of the Sith and the pressures of the Clone Wars. The relationship between Qui-Gon and Anakin also raises questions about how the Sith's plans might have been disrupted. Palpatine's strategy relied heavily on exploiting Anakin's insecurities and isolating him from potential sources of guidance and support. Qui-Gon, with his profound understanding of the Force and his unwavering commitment to Anakin, would have presented a formidable obstacle to these manipulations. By addressing Anakin's fears and doubts early on, Qui-Gon could have prevented the cracks in his psyche that the Sith later exploited. It is also worth considering how Qui-Gon's presence might have influenced other key characters in the saga. Obi-Wan Kenobi, for instance, would have been freed from the immense responsibility of training Anakin, allowing him to focus on his own development as a Jedi Knight and later a Master. Obi-Wan's relationship with Anakin, while close, was often marked by tension and miscommunication, partly due to the circumstances under which their bond was formed. With Qui-Gon as a mediator and guide, the dynamic between Obi-Wan and Anakin might have been more harmonious and supportive. Padme Amidala's role in Anakin's life would also have been affected by Qui-Gon's mentorship. Qui-Gon's open-mindedness and compassion might have allowed Anakin to approach his relationship with Padme in a healthier and more balanced way. By helping Anakin understand and accept his feelings rather than suppress them, Qui-Gon could have reduced the fear and secrecy that ultimately contributed to Anakin's fall. This, in turn, might have strengthened Padme's ability to support Anakin during his moments of doubt and despair. Finally, Qui-Gon's perspective on the prophecy of the Chosen One would have provided a crucial counterbalance to the often rigid interpretations held by the Jedi Council. Qui-Gon's belief in Anakin's potential to bring balance to the Force would have been tempered by his understanding of the complexities of destiny and free will. Rather than pressuring Anakin to fulfill a predetermined role, Qui-Gon would have guided him toward finding his own path within the Force, empowering him to make choices that aligned with his values and beliefs. In this alternate timeline, the galaxy's fate hinges on the profound difference a single figure like Qui-Gon Jinn could make. By nurturing Anakin's strengths and addressing his vulnerabilities, Qui-Gon would have laid the foundation for a future defined by hope and harmony rather than tragedy and darkness. While the precise details of this alternate reality remain speculative, the possibilities underscore the transformative power of mentorship, understanding, and the enduring connection between master and apprentice.